Oh, boy.
I came 5 weeks before the earthquake.
Okay. Well, welcome.
So that tells you what my first impression, because I was like, oh, this is a nice campus. And, 5 weeks later, on January 17th, we had the earthquake. And, I didn't even know about it. A friend of mine from Cal State LA called me. I was living in Los Angeles. I felt it, but I didn't really, wasn't that impacted where I lived. And she said, well, it was your campus. It was Northridge. And I'm like, what? So, I get up and start watching TV and trying to figure out what's happening, trying to figure out how to get to campus when I heard the 118, the section of the freeway had collapsed. And I had to pull out a Thomas guide, if you remember those, maps, and try to navigate my way to the campus because I hadn't been here that long.
Welcome to Matador Memories. I'm your host, Carmen Ramos Chandler, and today, Debra Hammond, our retiring executive director of the University Student Union, is joining us. And we're going to spend the next several minutes talking about her time at CSUN and her favorite memories about the institution. Welcome, Debra.
Welcome. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, first off, let's get past the hard part. You're retiring.
Yes. And I'm excited.
What brought you to the decision that after 30 years you decided it was time to retire?
A number of things. I have kids, and they are married. And one recently announced that they are pregnant.
Ooh, congratulations.
Yeah, so I'm going to be Gigi, not grandmother. So I want to be clear on that. So I thought that was exciting. And, I want to go out when I'm feeling good. I have other things that I want to do in my life. I've devoted a lot of time and attention to higher education and CSUN and students. And now I want to do some other things for me.
So tell me, what was your journey to CSUN?
Oh, boy. I started on the East Coast. I'm a New Jersey transplant. And I went to Rutgers University. And then I worked at Cook College, which is the agricultural school of Rutgers in New Brunswick, for about 7.5 years in 3 different positions. And then I thought it was time to move somewhere else. I think there was a rumor at that time that if you worked at one institution for 10 years, if you didn't go anywhere else, you couldn't go anywhere else. So, I was young and I believed that. So I said, oh, it's time to go somewhere. And I wanted to go to a city or near a city. So I had a couple opportunities, and Cal State Los Angeles came up. So I worked at Cal State LA for about 6.5 years. And I wanted a bigger opportunity, a more comprehensive university, bigger student union. And this one came up. So I applied, and I was lucky enough to get the position, and here I am. And I told Dr. William Watkins, I told him, I'll be here 5 to 7 years, and then I'm gone. And
I think it's been 30 years.
Yes. CSUN has a way of kind of pulling you in a very good way. Because I absolutely love the students here and love the opportunities that I've been given, a chance to really create some things. And, because I said 5 to 7 years, I'll be bored. I've never been bored here. There's always something to do. There's always something to create. And students are so engaged in what we do here, it's hard to leave. So that's really why I've been here that long.
What are your first memories, your first impressions 30 years ago of coming to this campus? this was 30 years ago. We got an earthquake and stuff. So did you come before or after the earthquake?
Before.
Oh, boy.
I came 5 weeks before the earthquake.
Okay. Well, welcome.
So that tells you what my first impression, because I was like, oh, this is a nice campus. And, 5 weeks later, on January 17th, we had the earthquake. And, I didn't even know about it. A friend of mine from Cal State LA called me. I was living in Los Angeles. I felt it, but I didn't really, wasn't that impacted where I lived. And she said, well, it was your campus. It was Northridge. And I'm like, what? So, I get up and start watching TV and trying to figure out what's happening, trying to figure out how to get to campus, when I heard the 118, the section of the freeway had collapsed. And I had to pull out a Thomas guide, if you remember those, maps, and try to navigate my way to the campus, because I hadn't been here that long. So that was my first memory. I remember it being cold, and I remember us working outside in tents. I remember us really trying to strategize about how to repair the facilities. I remember us being the people who were in charge. It wasn't based on position at that time. Yeah. It was based on knowledge. Who had the expertise that we needed to direct this particular operation? I think one of the things that stood out to me most of all, like a memory, was one late afternoon, because it was just getting a little dusk, and our president, President Blenda Wilson, was standing and kind of looking over the entire campus, and a single tear came down her cheek, which kind of summed up everything for me, because she said to us, we had a big campus meeting outside in the tent, and she said, we will be open on February 14th, 2 weeks after we should have been open. And we're all looking at each other. It's like, is this woman crazy? Are we going to really be able to do this? But, we, galvanized. And we really brought everything together, the right people at the right times. And then we had, significant aftershocks that really kind of, we thought we had something in place, and then it wasn't in place anymore. And for me, I think I got to know people quickly. At that time, I had to kind of introduce myself to everyone because I didn't know anyone. And, what can we do to help? And, and then relying on our team, particularly our facilities team, to figure out what was happening, figure out how we could assist. Several departments actually came and were actually a part of the student union because we had space and we were only 2 stories tall, where the taller buildings got significantly more damage than we did. So I remember that.
Your role on the campus has always been, now we say we are a student-focused campus, but the University Student Union's sole reason for existing is to serve the students.
Absolutely.
So what was your experience like? What was those first few cohorts of students who passed through your lives 30 years ago, what were they like? And how do they compare to the students you deal with now?
That's a great question. I think all the students are different because there's generational differences now in terms of their approach and those kinds of things. But I think the one commonality is that the students want to be here. They recognize that going to CSUN in particular, but higher ed in general, is a privilege. And I think they want to make the most of that. I think the students at that time, when I first got here, were probably more reflective and more listening to authorities. And I think the students today are advocates for themselves and others at a much higher level. And they're also very much into things like self-care. I think we have learned a lot from the students of today. And I think that they when they look at a circumstance for themselves, it's not just for themselves, and it's not just for their community. It's for all communities. How fair is this? How equitable is this? And recognizing that a variety of people need a variety of things. And I think it has made us better because we can be more responsive, less reactive. We can be more thoughtful and planful. What is it that students need in order to help them be successful? Because that's what our job is. As the outside of the classroom experience, how do we move them in a way that's supportive, challenging, and also supportive at the same time?
It seems almost as if when you started here, we were leading the students in some ways. Not that they knew what they're learning in the classroom, but we were leading them to growth. And in a strange way, they're asking us to catch up with their evolution.
I love that analogy because there's a article that I pass out to all new staff members that come on board, and it's called The Difference Between Emanation and Generation. And it talks about leadership development, and it talks about at the beginning, and the students that we often interacted with, they were the students who were asking the questions, and we were giving them the direction, just like you talked about. The students of today are posing different kinds of questions that are more challenging for us. And they are also leading us in a direction that we might not have gone if it wasn't for them being insistent on something.
I like that because as I'm listening to you and I'm thinking of the students that I interact with, they're not saying they have the answers to their questions, but they're recognizing your position and asking you, why don't you have those answers to my questions?
Exactly. I think that's a great way to sum it up, because I think that there's an expectation because we're in these positions of authority or positionality that we should have the answers to those questions. And what I am finding is most of the times we may not, but we are and we should have the ability to co-create with them. So if we can gain their trust, that we can sit down together around a table and try to figure out what needs to be done, then I think we're all better off for that.
Now, you and I have had this journey together, so to speak. You just started a couple months before I did, but we've been here 30 years. And I want to build on something you said, is that co-creation. When I first started here, and I've always had students who worked in my area, it often was as a mentor-teacher role to those students. And I'm not saying I'm no longer a mentor, but now they're co-collaborators for those students who work with me. And to see that evolution, I don't know whether to credit that to, and most of our students come from public schools. They're coming from LAUSD, which gets a lot of bad rap, but they're coming from LAUSD, and they have an ownership, not a possessiveness, but an ownership over their educational journey, that they have expectations, where students 30 years ago were much more docile about that. There were always exceptions. But I see more of our student body embracing that those high expectations, and I know what I want out of my educational experience beyond what I get in the classroom. And I think that it's actually kind of exciting. Do you find it?
I think it's incredibly exciting, and what your words really remind me that our students do have high expectations for themselves, but they also are looking at education as an investment in themselves. And if I'm going to invest in myself, I have expectations. I'm paying for this. Whether I'm getting financial aid or not, I need to invest in myself and my education. And I expect you to be a partner in that process. I don't expect you to kind of sit on the sideline, and if I ask for support, I want to get it. And I think that's what our job is to do, is to provide that. And I think there is another side of that, a paradoxical side, in terms of going back to an old student development theory, challenge and support. That's what our job is to do, is to challenge students to go higher. I really believe that if they come in at one level and they leave at the same level, then we have failed them. Our job is to have them reach higher, see further, have greater experiences, seize different opportunities, move outside of their comfort zones, all of those things, and to challenge the status quo. I think that's what education should be about.
Now, you're in the USU. For those of you in the audience that don't know what the University Student Union is or have vague recollections from decades ago when they were college students, explain what a USU, and tell me what it was like in 1993, 94 when you first came on board. What was CSUN's USU like?
Well, the University Student Union is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation that is governed by students. So every year I get a new student boss. So I have the opportunity to teach and train while they're also evaluating me. So it's a really unique kind of relationship. And we provide all of the kind of out of classroom experiences that students participate in, whether it be programs, meeting room reservations and support, and resource centers, recreation, social activities, all of those kinds of things. And in 1993, 94, we had a facility that was not very open.
It was enclosed. I remember it was kind of like...
It almost felt like a prison.
Yeah, I didn't want to use the word.
Yeah, so I had no other way to describe that. And it had a walkway, or a catwalk kind of around the top that really reminded you of the prison. And, and that was one of the things I was like, we have got to do something about this. We've got to open up this facility so it feels better. It feels like a place that people want to be. And we had an older facility. We had some food service. I think we had an ice cream shop and,
I don't remember the ice cream shop.
Yeah, called Scoops.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We had a bike shop.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so we had...
a post office.
And a post office. And we had a number of services that students wanted. And then we did a lot of programming. We did film series and that kind of thing. And then it morphed over time. We even had concerts where we had up-and-coming artists like Biggie Smalls and, students like, really? Yes. When they were up-and-coming.
Do you remember the pit where they, in theory, at homecoming, there would be a bonfire?
Bonfire that never worked.
Exactly.
Yes, but we still had that,
I mean, our claim to fame is Rage Against the Machine doing the very first concert.
Exactly. So we had those kind of
Yeah.
experiences for students. And over the years, it has morphed because now students want more services of a different kind, not amenity services, but basic need services, things that are going to keep them in school. Food, housing support, mental health support, the things that actually make a difference for our students. And then a number of resource centers that are, some are cultural and identity based, like the Veterans Resource Center, the Dream Center for Undocumented Students, the Pride Center for LGBTQIA plus students. All of those things are recent. They're basically, most of them have celebrated their 10-year anniversaries. And then we also added other kinds of amenities that are also related to health and wellness and well-being, which is the Student Recreation Center, of course, and the Oasis Wellness Center.
And then you have the Nest coming.
Yes. We're excited about the Valera Nest. And the Valera Nest is a space that will actually house our food pantry for the campus. It will have basic needs, the care coordinators who assist students with housing challenges or food insecurities. We'll have the CalFresh sign-up offices in there. We will have Maddie's Closet, which is a clothing, kind of a boutique clothing outlet where we give free clothing to students who are going on interviews and internships. And it will also have, a community kitchen called Isla's Kitchen that will have microwaves and toasters and hot water dispensers and cold food storage lockers, all the things that students need to prepare their own meals or bring something with them that they can easily prepare so that they don't have to spend a lot of money to survive. So I think, but any student can use it. So, and I think we did a workshop recently, and it was called From the Margins to the Center. And that's what we're really trying to do, is destigmatize things like basic needs, because they are just a need. It's a resource that we're providing for students, and we want to center it in the center of campus, in the student experience, so it's not on the fringes anymore. So this becomes a part of our normal experience in a way that we can really support students.
And this is student-driven in the sense that students are telling you this is what we need, because that's the USU has a student-driven board of directors. It's not a bunch of faculty who are telling us what they think we need.
It's absolutely, we have 16 members of the board, and 10 of them are students. And all of these committees all have student leaders of each of the committees. And even the renovation, construction, development is led by students. And I think one of the things that's really important is that we do a lot of surveys. We do a lot of focus groups and survey assessment of students, asking them what they want. And we got great feedback from them. And of all the services that were listed and they had opportunities to add, basic needs came up as number one. So we know we're going in the right direction because the students have already told us where they want us to go.